Now let us discuss about the factors for decomposition process. What are the factors for decomposition? Now the factors responsible for decomposition are: one is decomposition occurs through activity of microbes, because most of the microbes are decomposers. They have that essential enzymes to degrade that complex organic matter into simple substance. Temperature, soil moisture regulate the decomposition process. Warm and moist environment favors for the decomposition. Low temperature and anaerobic conditions. Anaerobic means without oxygen. Okay, it inhibit decomposition. For decomposition we need oxygen environment, we need little bit high temperature, that will favor your decomposition process. And finally, decomposition rate will be slower if detritus is rich in lignin and chitin. As we have seen in humus contain very rich in lignin and chitin, and that's why those decomposers or the detrivores cannot able to degrade them very quickly. It will take more time to degrade that humus, that organic matter which contain lignin and chitin in high quantity. It cannot be degraded by it will be degraded by the decomposers, but in a very slow rate, and when they will degrade completely, it will lead to the formation of minerals. So this was about the factors for decomposition. Again I repeat, decomposition will occur through the activity of microbes, as I have said, because microbes have most of the microbes involved in detritus food chain, in decomposing food chain, because they have that essential enzymes to break it down, that complex organic matter present in the dead animal and plant remains and their waste products to simple substance. Temperature, soil moisture regulate for the decomposition process. Warm and moist environment is favorable for decomposition. Low temperature and anaerobic condition, that means absence of oxygen, will inhibit your decomposition process. And decomposition rate is slower if detritus is rich in lignin and chitin, because they are very complicated structure, and they cannot be degraded easily. Okay, and it will take a prolonged long period of time to degrade them by the detrivores. The third important function of your ecosystem is your energy flow. And as I have mentioned before about the energy flow in the previous video, we will just go through this part. On the same time, I will try to discuss about the food chains and the ecological pyramids. Okay, so what does energy flow means? What does energy flow means? Energy flow is what? It is the amount of energy that moves through a food chain. The energy input or the energy that enters the ecosystem is measured in joules and calories. And I have said also that when energy is passed from one trophic level to another trophic level, each time some of the energy is lost as heat into the environment, and this occurs due to the fact that each organism must use some amount of energy that they receive from the other organism in order to survive. And while breaking down that organic matter, while breaking down that biomass where the energy was stored by the previous trophic level, we need oxygen to do that, we need oxidation for that process, and due to which that reason some amount of, during breaking down that organic matter, some energy is also lost for during that process of breaking down that organic matter. So very few energy is available to the next trophic level. So what it is saying, that energy flow in an ecosystem is always unidirectional. Unidirectional means it flows in only one way. It does not means that from primary consumers it will go to the secondary consumers, okay, but it will not come back to the primary consumers again. It always flow in a unidirectional. Okay, and the source of all energy in ecosystem is the sun, you know, and out of the sun's total radiation, it has been observed and researched that 50% of the radiation from the sun is essential for the plants to make their food. That means 50% of the sun's radiation are related with the photosynthetically activity of the plants, known as PAR, photosynthetically active radiation. This radiation is enough for the plants to grow, to make their food, but plants cannot take that 50% of that radiation. Only 2 to 10% of this radiation, called photosynthetically active radiation, used by the plants to captured by photosynthesis process, by photosynthetic organisms for the synthesis of organic matter, and all organisms are dependent on for the food on producers either directly or indirectly. So you can see, out of 50% of the sun's total photosynthetically active radiation, only 2 to 10% of this radiation are utilized by the producers, by the photosynthetic organisms to make their food. And those producers, we are depending on those producers either directly or indirectly, as you can see. Okay, so I will try to show you a diagram that how the energy is getting transferred. Okay, okay, so let us see. So you can see here the producers, the sun's energy. From the left you can see the energy from the sun, 1 million kilocalorie. It is entering to the earth, out of which the plants are utilizing only 2 to 10%, and they are making the food and storing that energy. How much? Only 10,000 kilocalorie. So out of that 1 million kilocalorie, only 10,000 kilocalorie is actually utilized by the producers, and then the producers are using that energy, they are storing the energy. Loss of energy occurs when that producers are getting consumed by the primary consumers, like for example cattle or rabbit. Here I have said rabbit, they are not taking that whole 10,000 kilocalorie energy from the producers. While breaking down that food, while breaking down that organic matter present in that producer, oxidation is done, and during that time loss of energy occurs. At the same time, the consumers, that is the primary consumer, the rabbit, is doing respiration and other bodily activities, cellular activities, which leads to loss of that energy, and they are storing a very minute amount of energy. That is, out of 10,000 kilocalorie, only 1,000 kilocalorie is getting assimilated or accumulated by the rabbit, by the primary consumers within their body. Further, that rabbit is getting eaten up by a higher level consumer called secondary consumer, for example snake. Okay, it may be fox. I have written snake because I have to show you trophic levels. So when the snake is eating that rabbit, what happened? They are not using the total 1000 kilocalorie, because while consuming that food they have to oxidize that, and for that there will be release of some energy. At the same time, the snake is doing other bodily activities which leads to loss of energy. So very minute amount of energy is available in their body, okay, in their biomass, that is about 100 kilocalories. So you can see 10% rule, as a result of 10% rule, how it is occurring.
then that snake is be eaten up by the tertiary consumers, the topmost consumer, you can say, eagle. Okay, and as a result, the same process occurs. Only 10 kilocalorie of energy is available to the eagle. Okay, and that's why you will see that in a particular ecosystem, as you move to the lower trophic level to the higher trophic level, the number of populations of the higher trophic level goes on decreasing, because less energy will be available, so they will need more food, okay, to adjust with their body. So at each trophic level, if you see, at each trophic level in a food chain, a large portion of energy is used up for their own maintenance and ultimately lost as heat. In each trophic level, if you see, when they are involved in food chain, large portion of energy is used up for their own maintenance and ultimately lost as heat. Consequently, organisms in each trophic level pass on less and less energy than they receive. This tends to limit the number of trophic level to 4 or 5. This is the main reason that why there is no such or other higher trophic levels, because as most of the energy is lost as heat, as you transfer the energy in the form of food from one trophic level to another trophic level, less energy is available. So the longer the food chain, the less is the energy available to the final trophic level, and that's why there is a limit of the trophic level up to 5, not more than that. But it does not means that they will consume that particular type of consumer, that particular type of lower trophic level. They have other feeding habits also, just like we are not only depend on rice, we can also be depend on wheat and other foods. Similarly, one animal or one trophic level animal does not depend on that particular species, it depends on the other animals also, and that's why there is a clash between the food chains, and that is called as food web. So multiple food chains occur within the environment to make a food web that you will see. Okay, now two terms that may come in your MCQ exams if your online examination will occur. If occurs, I don't think so this semester offline examination will occur or not. But if this type of MCQ, as you have faced in earlier semester, if this type of MCQ exam occurs, then there may be a chance that this type of question may come, the standing crop and standing state. So just define with these terms what is standing crop and standing state. Each trophic level has certain mass of living material at a particular time called as standing crop. So what does standing crop means? Each trophic level has certain mass of living material at a particular time, that is called as standing crop. Excuse me. So each trophic level has certain mass of living material at a particular time, it is called as standing crop. What is the amount of living material stored within that body of that trophic level organisms is called standing crop, and the amount of inorganic matter present in an ecosystem is called standing state. So the total amount of inorganic matter in the form of phosphorus, in the form of nitrogen, in the form of um, oxygen, not oxygen, in the form of calcium, all the inorganic nutrients, okay, that are present in the environment, in the ecosystem, is called standing state. And standing crop means what is the mass of living material present in each trophic level at particular time is called standing crop. So let us move to the next page now. Now let us discuss more about the energy. We have said about the energy flow in our first video, and here now from this page I am trying to discuss about the food chain, as well as the energy flow is also getting discussed here, bit of them. So in an ecosystem, one can observe the transfer of flow of energy from one trophic level to the other trophic level, or another in succession. So succession means the next trophic level here. So the patterns of eating and being eaten from a linear chain is called food chain, as we know. What is the pattern of eating of one trophic level by the another trophic level, or being eaten by other organisms, forms a linear chain called as food chain. Okay, so food chain simply means where one trophic level organisms are eating the lower trophic level organisms, and itself is getting eaten by the higher trophic level organisms in a linear way, not simultaneous way but linear way. As we know, the primary producers trap the radiant energy, the energy from the sun, called as photosynthetically active radiations, PAR, and transfer that to chemical or potential energy. The potential energy is the energy stored within their body in the form of organic compounds like your carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Then that primary producers that trap that energy from the sun in the form of chemical energy or potential energy within their body in the form of carbohydrate, protein, and fats, when higher when the consumers is eating those plants, or when a bacteria is decomposing that plants, sometimes the plant get affected with disease and the plants die by the decomposer's action. So when a herbivore animal eats a plant, or when a bacteria decompose that particular plant, these organic compounds get oxidized. It is oxidized by the help of oxygen, and the process is called oxidation. And this is done by almost all consumers to break down that complex organic compound in simple products so that we can use them for our own purpose, just like a puzzle. For example, the proteins, we are going to break down the proteins. We are eating protein rich food like milk, okay, like some other sources also, like grams they contain protein. So when you are consuming that protein, what we do, proteins are the build up of amino acids. So we break down those amino acids, we break down those proteins so that we can get that amino acids, and we use that amino acids to make our own protein. So just like a puzzle, okay, somebody make a car, that's from the same puzzle we are making an aeroplane. Okay, so just like that, what we are doing, what here it is doing, when a consumer is eating a plant, or when a bacterial decomposer is decomposing, then these organic compounds get oxidized, and during oxidation what happens, some amount of energy will be liberated, which is just equal to the amount of energy used during synthesizing those substances. When we are doing photosynthesis, what happened, we are using some energy, the plant is using some energy, some sort of energy to make that reactions possible. They take the energy from the sun, okay. At the same time, when that matter, that organic matter produced by the producers is getting consumed by the consumers, they have to oxidize that energy, and during oxidation of that energy, some amount of energy is getting lost, and that amount of energy which is getting lost, or you can say liberated, is equal to the total amount of energy used during making that substance. And this comes here, the first law of thermodynamics. Some amount of energy is getting lost as heat and not useful energy, that comes into the second law of thermodynamics principle, right? So if this animal that I have talked you about. If this animal is getting eaten up by another animal, by the higher trophic level organism, along with the transfer of energy from a herbivore to carnivore, a further decrease of useful energy occurs, because again oxidation will be done. Again, that higher trophic level animal will degrade, not degrade, will break down that organic matter present in the herbivore, and some amount of energy will be released, which is just equal to the amount of energy which was used by the herbivore now to synthesize that substance. Okay, and thus there will be loss of energy, and in this way the energy will get lost as it pass from one trophic level to the other trophic level. So such transfer of energy from organism to organism will sustain that ecosystem, and when energy is transferred from individual to individual in a particular community, such as in ponds, lakes or river, we come across the food chain, right? So in nature basically two types of food chains are there. One is called grazing food chain and another one is detritus food chain. So these two types of food chain we will discuss. Already I have discussed you about the detritus food chain in our second video. Just go through it. When we were talking about the decomposition, I have also said you about the detritus food chain. So let us talk about the grazing food chain. It's very simple, and it is an example of energy flow also. So this type of food chain starts from the living green plants, and it goes from grazing herbivores and on to carnivores. So this type of food chain starts from living green plants, it goes to the grazing herbivores and on to the carnivores. Now from green plants it starts, it goes to the grazing animals, the first consumers, primary consumers, and then it goes to the secondary consumers, which are the carnivores. Ecosystem for this such type of food chain are directly dependent on an influx of solar radiation. Obviously, here sun plays an important role in maintaining that food chain, and thus this type of food chain depend on autotrophic energy capture and movement of this energy to the herbivores and further to the carnivores. Now there are various type of food chain, grazing food chain that we can see. Like in case of here, the phytoplanktons are producing the energy in the aquatic environment. They are eaten up by the zooplanktons. Zooplanktons are getting eaten up by the fishes, and then further it is eaten up by the large fishes. Or for example, the grasses are eaten by rabbit, the rabbit are eaten by fox, and so on. Okay. Now grazing food chain has some little bit of what can I say, some variants of grazing food chain are there also, like for example the parasitic food chain. In parasitic food chain, parasitic organisms exists where the smaller organisms are consuming the larger organisms. What are parasites actually? There are certain small organisms which live in the body of higher organisms, and they are trying to utilize the nutrients which were prepared by the higher organisms. Okay, now this is an exception of the grazing, it is the exception of a grazing food chain, because in grazing food chain what we know, the lower organisms are eaten up by the higher organisms, right? But here the smaller organisms are consuming the larger organisms nutrients without killing. They are not killing the higher organisms, but they are causing certain disease, little bit of disease or disorder, discomfort, but not killing that larger organisms. At the same time they are consuming the nutrients. So here you can see the diagram that I have just draw. Here you can see solar radiation which is getting entered to the ecosystem, consuming by the autotrophs. Okay, and some of the energy is getting lost as a result of respiration, as given in R1. And then F1 I have said, F1 is actually the energy lost in the form of excretory products, although very minute amount of excretory products produced by the autotrophs,
C1, C1 or C refers to the energy lost during decay, which will be further utilized by the decomposers in detritus food chain. That particular autotrophs is consuming by the herbivores, and herbivores are assimilating that food from that autotrophs. During oxidation there will be loss of energy a little bit. Then again I written F under the herbivory, because some of the energy is getting lost by the herbivore organisms in the form of excretory products. Respiration activity is also done, which leads to loss of energy, and the herbivore will also be decomposed further in one time. If they are not eaten by carnivore, one day they will die, and there will be decomposition occurs, where that energy will be used up by the decomposers to recycle that energy. Similarly, the herbivores are eaten up by the carnivores, which are written as A3. A3 is actually the food or the energy which is assimilating by the carnivores to use them. Okay, and the excretory products are also released by carnivores. Respiration activity is also done by carnivores, as given by F3 and R3 respectively. And the primary carnivores will be finally, if they are not eaten by the secondary consumers, they will die one day, and as a result the decaying organisms will utilize that nutrients that present in that dead organic matter within their body. So in this way it continues, and this is the example of a grazing food chain. If diagram comes, then you have to draw in this diagram. So this was all about the food chain. Now I will talk to you about the food web. It is simple term. Many multiple food chains interact with each other to form a food web. So just what does food web means? Actually there is a various diagram based on the food web you can see in the internet source. I have not drawn the diagram, just go through it. So what does food web means? In a given ecosystem, various food chains are linked together. Okay, in a given ecosystem, various food chains are linked with one another. They interact with each other to form a complex network of food chain called as food web. Okay, what does web means? Web means jal. Okay, and it is made up of a meshwork of fibers, right? Just like that, multiple food chain makes a food web, because when one organism is not depend on that particular organism, they have to rely on other organisms also, otherwise they will not survive. So the same organism may be eaten by several other organisms of higher trophic level, or an organism may feed upon by several different organisms at lower trophic level. That is called food web. Usually this kind of food changes occur in an ecosystem behavior depend on within the age of the organism and the food activity. So depend on the food it depends on the food availability, what type of food is available in that particular region. Depends on the age of the organism, you get the particular organism depend on that other species as well, of the lower order species, or getting eaten up by the other animals of the higher species of the higher trophic level. And it depends on the age of the organism and food availability. Like young age animals, they tend to eat on bigger trees, okay, but the old organisms, they tend to eat grass only. In case of herbivores, I am saying. In case of carnivores, the young animals like tiger tend to kill a deer or somehow some food, but the old organisms will tend to kill the mice and smaller organisms that can be easily be killed, that will not require too much effort compared to the previous one. So with the increasing of age, related to the age and food availability, food web occurs. Okay, so here the same organism may operate in ecosystem at more than one trophic level. So you can see that the same organism, it can operate in the ecosystem
more than one trophic level. Okay, in the food web we can see them. And to identify that how much that food web is complex, we have to carry out a term called complexity. So the complexity of food web can vary greatly. It depends on what type of ecosystems they are living and what type of food habits they are having. The food chains are occurring in that site. Depending on that, we measure a quantity called connectance of food web, where there is a formula of connectance: actual number of interspecific interactions by potential number of interspecific interactions. So connectance can simply be defined as it is the ratio of actual number of interspecific interactions to the potential number of interspecific interactions. That means how much really that particular organism is interacting with the with that other trophic level species by what is the truly number of interspecific interactions are occurring. Okay, so this is actually the food web. In the next video I will talk you about the ecological pyramids.